Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're well. Delighted to see you all here. It's Mike Smith with your live market update and charts of the day. And yeah, just let me know you can hear and see me okay. That will be sensational, and then we'll get into it. Good to hear, Michael. You got the signal? Yes, all good, Ross. Cheers. Thanks, David. Cheers, Rachel. All is good, thank you. And okay, well, let's get things kicked off then. Obviously, we've got to put this important message up. This is my opinion, and really sort of outlines my trading style and shouldn't be taken as representative of Go Markets. And obviously, most importantly, bear in mind that this is delivered for educational purposes only, not direct advice to take trading action. You've got to make your own decisions on that with anything that you see or hear, and obviously best done with the use of a trading plan, which I'm sure you've all got in place. And risk management is critical with everything you do in trading. So let's have a look at what's coming across the news today. The Dow has hit a record high overnight. G'day, Chris. Hi, Dave. Good to see you here, buddy. But it did trade, all the major indices traded within a relatively tight trading range. And the Nasdaq underperformed a little bit. That was the one that ended up in negative territory slightly by about 0.3%. US futures trading around about neutral at the moment, slightly to the upside when I last looked. And likewise with Asian markets, we're all slightly to the upside in early trading, but we do notice the ASX is dropping off a little bit, and we'll have a look at that in a moment as well. The US dollar index on the FX front is pushing up against resistance. Precious metals have given up recent gains to move back into a range, but a fairly flat day on FX. But there are a couple of opportunities that may be worth looking at because we are in a fairly big data period. We've got the UK interest rate decision, which may make the GB pound interesting later on. And of course, they've got the US weekly jobs numbers out today, as well as the non-farm payrolls tomorrow. So that's what's going across the news in terms of where things are sitting. Earnings are still coming in very well indeed, which is helping keep markets relatively high. And the data keeps on coming out, demonstrating slow but sure economic growth across the board, with the exception, obviously, of places like India, which is still tragically hit by a major COVID incidence and death rate. So let's just have a look at some of the meat around those bones, and we'll just quickly check out the futures, and we can see though the US is slightly positive on the futures contracts. Russell's slightly outperforming. Nikkei is doing very well at this stage, and the Euro futures are looking slightly to the upside, and the VIX is consequently down and has been trading down for the last few days. Notice that the US dollar on the back end of that equity market strength, as we would expect, is looking slightly weak, but you notice how there's very little movement at all in the currency markets. Kiwi's relatively strong, and the Japanese yen is relatively weak, so there may be an opportunity or two to kick around there. You can see how flat gold and silver are at this stage as well. Now, if we look at data coming across the wires, I'll check in with that in a minute, Bruce. We've got, let me just get it on the right day, that helps. So that was yesterday's numbers. In terms of today, we have got some retail sales numbers coming out of Europe. There's that interest rate decision out of the UK. It's really going to be the monetary policy summary that's going to be the market mover. If anything, nobody expects us to move from the 0.1% that has been in place for some time. And of course, we've got the weekly employment numbers coming out of the US. We've got a couple of speeches going on today. Christine Lagarde is speaking as the ECB president. Be interesting to see if there's any policy change intimated there. And of course, we've got the one of the Fed players, Williams, speaking later on as well. So again, although that does have some market movement potentially, in both cases, it's likely to be relatively muted compared to the other things that are coming out today. So that's where it's at. Let's have a little look around the charts. Bruce, trying to place an order for XPR USD, but I want to get an only option closing allowed message. I will have a look at that now. Just to follow through on from Tuesday, there was a few I put in front of you there. You can see our Luca, which was our chart of the day on Tuesday, is doing okay, as sort of moved up around about what's that? It's around about 3%, I guess. Galaxy is struggling a little bit to make any headway, but we'll have a look at those charts in a moment. And we are slightly down on a US dollar, US 500 position at the moment. Let's just get rid of that, but I just wanted to demonstrate that we do actually sort of follow through on some of the things we talk about. So here's the US 500 daily. You can see we're looking a bit toppy here. Almost got a rounded top type of formation going on, but trading within a relatively tight range. We've had a couple of attempts over the last couple of weeks to get down to this 4125, but you can see how it was rejected a couple of days ago. Pretty neutral last night. We are slightly higher in Asia today. Nasdaq, I put it on a 5-minute chart just so you can see how choppy it is in Asian trading. So you can see we started down, moved up towards this 13544 level, which you can see is really quite important on this. So the fact that it didn't break that to the upside means that there's not conviction there yet. But that's an interesting level. Could be an opportunity for a short-term Nasdaq trade on that if it breaks to the upside. If you look at the US dollar daily there, you see that push against resistance. And really, we've been trying that now for the last 4 sessions, but you can see almost an a textbook ascending triangle type of pattern coming up with a 91.33 resistance there. Consequently, of course, as I said, we've got gold and silver trading back within a range. We're trading between $26 and $27 on silver, and if we pop up a gold chart, you can see we're sort of stuck underneath that 1800 still. Little pullback a couple of days ago, but we are moving back up towards it today. Just on the crypto front, Bruce, here's your XRP. Check in with support at GoMarkets, give them a ring to see what's happening with that order type. But you can see we've certainly got some buying pressure coming into this, and look up for a potential move above 184 on Ripple. If we look at Ethereum, again, creeping ever higher. Once it broke that 3,000, it seemed to sort of precipitate some more buying. Whereas on Bitcoin, we've been a bit flat and continue to be so, really sort of struggling to break that 57 with any conviction. So there's my little meander around cryptos. In light of that US dollar movement being very small, been very little to report on that. We're seeing that across really some of the US dollar pairs. You can see that the euro is stuck just above this support, which is tested for the last 4 sessions at 119.88. On the hourly chart, you can see that in a little more detail. We did test it intra-session during the European and US sessions last night, but we look as though we're sort of bouncing back off that again. Way too early to even consider anything that resembles a long trade on this. So patience is required. Perhaps the non-farm payrolls or even the retail sales data coming out of Europe may move this to some degree. As we said, GB pound could be interesting. I've put it on the hourly chart so you can see really what a tight range this, along with just about every other currency is trading at the moment. So we've been trading here in between, using the 200 MA on the hourly chart as support and about 139.14 to the upside. And you can see on the daily chart, it's trading within the middle of the range of two more established support and resistance lines there and there. If we look at Aussie USD, we'll put it on. Whoa, I'll just have a look at what's happened with that candle. On the daily chart, we are trading within a range, but we just put on 30-minute chart. We've got something that's gone on there that's sort of interesting. Let's just check back on that economic data. And let's see what might be going on here. Nothing in terms of data front, must be an announcement of some description. But that has happened in the last 10 minutes or so. So check that out, that's interesting. But you can see how that's pushing us back down towards this sort of support at 96, 94, let's call it, sorry, 76, 94, let's call it 77. So interesting to just keep an eye on that over the next few minutes. We might check in on that in a little while. If we look at US yen, we can see that that is threatening to burst through again. But again, this has happened for the last 4 trading sessions. So a little bit of work to do before we get interested in this long. But we can sort of see here in a little more detail, there's a short-term resistance here at 109.45. And then there's really only about 20 pips up to the more established key level at 109.67. So just watch that 109.67. If it breaks that to the upside, that could precipitate more buying. You can see how that is important in terms of where we are right now. And for long-term traders, and if you believe there may be some more buying coming into USD or some more Japanese weakness, there is potentially 120 pips to the upside for long-term traders. We're actually looking at the GB pound Aussie earlier, but you can see again, it's that Aussie weakness that we've sort of seen. Again, this is taking us interestingly back up to this 180 level. A nice round number there again, which could suggest a move higher, but look how choppy this has been over the last, really since the middle of February. So there's 130 pips if it gets up there to the downside, but would suggest there may be a pause at around about 40 pips. So have a look at this if it breaks 180.35. Now the other chart that caught our eye was the GB pound yen. There is the daily chart. So 151, let's call it 152 and 95. So we'll just call it 152. We've got 100 pips up to that 153 level. So that has us interested. Now, where do we need to be to break through this? Well, certainly in the short term, there's been some resistance at around about that 152.20 when it's actually broken through this intraday. So a break of that would take out all of these intraday highs on that daily chart and send us up towards this 153 level. So this is our chart of the day. The GB pound yen, look for a break of perhaps about 152.40 and then take advantage of that potential 60-70 pip move. So that's our FX chart of the day. But obviously that move on AUD is interesting. Let's just recheck in on that and just see what it's doing. Still going down. Now, I may have missed this opportunity. Obviously, there was if we caught it there, there would have been an opportunity. We're already down about 20 pips from there. We've got about 20 pips or so, I think. Yeah, about 20 pips there to the down till it hits that support. So it'll be interesting to see what then, really. Okay, so with that happening with the AUD, and I still haven't managed to locate what is going on there. Just want to see if I can find any headlines. See, all these other indices are higher apart from the ASX at the moment. Nothing come across the newswires that I can see right now. But there must have been something announced. Oh, there we go. So we've got masks back on in Sydney. From 5 p.m. today. That appears to be the major news announcement that's come along. So that may be what's happened to push the AUD downwards. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the ASX and see what's going on there. So we can see it's down 1.42% towards the lows of the session. Was doing okay earlier on, but you can see we opened higher, but then really since about half an hour into the trading day, we've just dropped down, and now we look as though we're going to retest the lows of the session, possibly on the back of that news as well. If we look at advances versus decliners, it's around about 2 to 1. As you can see there, resources are outperforming early on. Banks were looking at a little weak. We can see ANZ still struggling there. Bendigo struggling a little bit also. BHP outperforming. We talked about our chart of the day, I think, was FCX for the US on Tuesday. That still looks as though it's going gangbusters, and that's all to do with copper. But you can see there, CBA is booking the trend. That's pretty neutral. Macquarie's down when last I looked, about 0.63%. And so all the banks, there's NAB down 3%. That's on the back of some news. So all the banks are looking a little weaker. We're getting continued slow but sure progress in the energy stocks. Qantas is looking miserable on the back of that news, potentially down nearly 3% again. But we've got a few to look at that are of interest. Oz Minerals, as I said, up and worth a look at. So let's have a look at some of these charts. Start with BHP. BHP looking strong, but off the highs of the session on the back of possibly that news. But nevertheless, a really nice pop higher. We said this was of interest if it. So this was a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about key levels on this. So we suggested 48.70 was a key level, and it's not only broken through that; it's broken through that with a vengeance. So we are eyeing $50 on BHP. If we look at Oz Minerals, again, it was one that we were watching for a bounce. That was actually significantly higher again in early trading. That's dropped back down below $25. Interesting to see where this ends up. And if we look at a couple of others that we mentioned on Tuesday, first of all, Galaxy, again, another stock which was bounding higher up to 420 earlier in the session, but has just given up all of those gains. Somewhat irritatingly, now the one that has continued to do well and that we pointed out as our chart of the day was Iluka. You can see another big bounce today, but again, significantly off highs as that market weakness has come into play. So we sort of identified this at 750 as a key level break. And then when we looked at it on Tuesday, it was looking to close at highs after that little pullback there. So that was what we're talking about on Tuesday, and it's continued upwards. And as I said, already sort of clocked in, even with the drop, has already clocked in around about 6% in the last couple of days. Now, one other that we expressed interest in, simply because it's been so battered of late, as a potential bounce, was LYC. We pointed out this double bottom and we suggested that this level at 555 was important. And you can see how we not only broke through that yesterday, but we did continue higher today. But again, we're in the same picture as we're seeing right across the board at the moment, in that we've given up our highs of the day. So interesting to see where this closes. But we are going to make LYC our share CFD chart of the day because of this, but only if we get a close in the top third of that bar. So that's one to keep an eye on going forward. In terms of other ones we've referenced as we were just sort of going through there, Oil Search still looking interesting with that pickup in oil. Let's just quickly check back in on the futures, and I'll just show you why. So it's the Brent contract is up at $70 nearly. Crude oil, WTI crude is over 65. Both of those are important technical levels, and of course we're also seeing copper trade at multi-year highs. Again, we referenced this on Tuesday, but just to update you, there's our 2011 high at 450. We're actually trading above that. We had an intra-week high. Let's just pop on the weekly chart and see how far back it goes. Probably not far enough now, but you can see what copper's done of late. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, it was interesting. I was listening to an interview of the FCX, so Freeport in the US, their chairman, who's an FCX is the best copper play in the US essentially, and he was talking about how copper was going to be critical in terms of moving to renewable energy. Obviously, there's a massive infrastructure spend, not only in the US, but globally. And even China, who have dampened down their imports of copper to some degree, are still using it at an alarmingly high rate. So we've got a number of different reasons why copper demand is moving up, and whilst supply is not keeping up with that demand, and that's why we're seeing that move. And really, on an ongoing basis going forward, then that's really could be the bullish story, and really means that a material or resource position may not be a bad place to be. Let's just have a look around that sector. We haven't had a look at either FMG. I'll pop on FMG. You can see there not quite as exciting as the others. There seems to be a reluctance again to break through this sort of $23 level. That will be the key level on FMG, and we don't normally look at Rio, but let's pop it on just to see where Rio is trading. You can see it's underperforming. It's underperformed the others to a large degree, but let's just let it catch up. So again, a similar story today, in that we had a so really this was the line of importance, that 121.65. You can see how today we're actually down on the day, interestingly, simply because of what's happened intraday. The next key level, I probably wouldn't put that. I'll probably put it to the upside. I'll probably put it at 127. So it's probably about $3 in that. So not a great deal till we sort of start to hit those highs, but obviously that's looking very similar to BHP. FCX is one that I've been banging on about for ages, and I don't usually intra-trade FCX anything, but I actually did on FCX. So this was our US chart of the day on Tuesday, and you can see where that's gone. That's at highs we haven't seen ever. So just continues to go. This was a teen stock. The company was in a bit of a mess some time ago, and got a new CEO, got a change of focus. They got rid of everything else apart from really copper. So it's probably the purest copper play in terms of a stock. We like this break of $38. This is what we talked about last week, and again we saw it sort of move up back over this line on a Tuesday, and look at that, it's just gone rocketing higher, and still probably has a significant amount in it. Just put it on an hourly chart for a second, and you can see this was a really nice one to trade intraday. I think so. There's one trade up to there. So between that point and that point, there's trade 2 and there's trade 3. So a nice, not a bad little session, and obviously one of the advantages of being in Perth. Now, here's the great news: is that you can now, hot off the press, you can now have US shares on your demo account if you've got an MT5. If you're interested in that and giving some of these a crack, the other thing, of course, is you can obviously place orders outside of market hours with Go Markets only. No other MT5 broker does this in Australia. So if you are interested, what I want you to do is I want you to ping me an email ASAP, and we'll make sure that that's possible for you. I'll pop it through to support and I'll just make sure everything's good to go for you. So I'll just put my email address into chat if you want to send it. If you want to send a little email to that effect through, and I'll make sure that you can do it. Now, as I said, normally I don't trade intraday, but you could just see it just kept on going higher. I actually traded it on a slightly slower time frame than that, and just took advantage of 3 moves. Very rare that happens, but a staggeringly good day, and one that's going to continue to potentially go if copper continues. Let me just get rid of that. Not the ASX on the demo yet, Hugh. We're still looking at that. It's got to do with letting the exchange know, but we are looking at that, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll get that resolved. It's just in terms of getting the data from the exchange, we've got to let people know from a regulatory point of view, etc. So so just keep your eyes peeled on that one, Hugh, because as I said, we are working on it quite hard. Elsewhere, we didn't have a look. Travel stocks are getting hit hard because of that news. Let's just check in on QBE. I'm going to let it catch up. QBE have had a very, very strong couple of days. I think we actually put this chart up as well on Tuesday, but really popped higher. Now, again, really quite difficult but even on a monthly chart, what's interesting is a break of this level. Okay, so that 1048 that it's now broken through is pretty important. Actually, let's put it on a weekly chart. It's not quite as, but you can see how it's moved up to this next key level at 1090. So we get a break of this and we're gap filling. Okay, so in the first instance, potentially a move up around about 8% up to 1180, and then possibly 20% up to $13. So but watch for that $11 breakthrough. Okay, that's where we're looking in terms of confirmation that we're going to continue this very, very impressive move higher that we've had over the last few days. Now, one other, I think we talked about this on Tuesday as well, but is of real interest is Worley Parsons. Obviously, this has indirect impact from the resource sector. So we were looking at this level here. You can see that doji candle there, also where it closed. We just poked our nose over it yesterday. It doesn't look like a convincing candle today, but that is really par for the course in terms of what is today. Remember, this was a close below this line, so even though we started off higher, we moved down. So this is looking pretty hot to trot, but depends on what sort of candles we see going forward. But that looks quite like quite a nice chart. We have this long-term double bottom at the back end of the year and into January. So it wouldn't be surprising to see this move up substantially, possibly again around that 11 or 12% up to test this level sort of around $12.75 in the medium term. But bear in mind, it's not a really quick mover, but nevertheless is one that could get up there, certainly within a couple of weeks or so, providing this momentum continues. That break through the 200 MA we saw on Tuesday was significant. That's obviously precipitated some more buying, and away we go. Just have a quick look at the ASX futures contract, which is not surprisingly, I'm guessing, down. There it is. So this is Asian trading. You can see how choppy that's been and how that news has really changed the picture of things on the daily chart. Yesterday's close was high, so we're looking at really a move back up to that sort of 7,100 level to get excited again about the index as a whole. ALG as a short, we can have a look at it. Oh, that looks pretty miserable. Certainly, if you'd seen this at that point there, when it broke 90 cents, that was the key support level. Now as a short, you've got to look at where this might stop. And you would say probably around where it is now. So not far away from the 200 MA. There is a difficulty with this, with stocks that are this cheap, because it tends to be primarily or less technical in terms of what they do, generally speaking, and more fundamental. But undoubtedly, if it breaks that 200 MA, we could see it down somewhere around here. So technically, it's shaping up to be a short. Fundamentally, I'm not sure, but again, it's a bet on the markets going down, and we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing the markets supported where they are for right now, although that could obviously change. ALL, I know a couple of you are interested in this. We're still in an upwards trend channel on ALL, but you can see we're sort of stuck really around this sort of 37.85 level, so that might be the level to look at. APT, really not having a good day again. If we look at APT here, you can see we're really at a key level here. In fact, we've actually broken through the 200 MA now. So where it's sitting now at this $100 level is absolutely crucial in terms of where this stock may go next. Question is it going to bounce or not bounce? But the last, so there's since open, so it's just continued down. You can just see it's paused there for a while now. The other one that we've historically been in and out of and traded quite a lot until recently was Xero. Now Xero are starting to Xero are looking really nice in Asian trading, so that's the start of the day today and moving higher and continue to do so. And if we look at the daily chart, bring this in a bit. So in terms of closing prices, it looked as though it was going to tank in it and go possibly to test this 134 level here that we've got on here. Possibly too early to get in here, but it has certainly got our attention in light of today's action book in the market trend. But we'd probably wait until it breaks 141 to get confident about this going back up to 145 and even maybe testing 150. ANZ, we talked, ANZ we've sort of discussed in terms of how miserable this has been since they reported. This does look like a short. And let's just pop this. So you can see the breakthrough of that level, and we are trading towards the lows of the session. Banks are not looking healthy at all for some reason. So if you are looking to go short the market, and as I said, you want to be cautious with the overall index being at worst neutral, then it could be the banks that that may be worth a look at. But so just a couple of US ones just to check out. Let's just see how US airlines are doing. If we look at Delta, these have all had a pullback. Actually, LUV is probably a slightly kinder chart. So Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines. So we're looking to see if we can bounce off this level. We've sort of seemed to have found a support out of around about 60.81. Well, absolutely nowhere near where I put that line, of course. Around about that 1680 level. This has been important on a few occasions, and a bounce off that could be worth around about 4% to retest, or 3.5% to retest those highs there. So worth possibly keeping an eye on there. Obviously, we're in the midst of earnings, so we've got to be careful about what we're trading. Beyond Meat, we're looking like a short, but they seem to have recovered to some degree. It's just the wrong way. To a key level. So again, if the market sells off even more, that 120.48 level looks important for Beyond Meat. That's BYND. And there it is. Now we'll use MU as an example. So if we look at microchips, they're starting to try to bounce a little bit. Again, MU is a good example. You can see support line there at 83.38. So we're looking for a potential bounce on that. If we look at NVIDIA, again, there's a key level there which the market's playing with at around about 580. So be patient with these in the microchip space. Just watch for a bounce there. Let's just pop on Intel and see what that looks like. Intel's found support perhaps at that 200 MA. So again, watch for a bounce. This is an earnings gap. So perhaps a move into this or move. So maybe look, if this gets its way back up to 58, that might be a sign that we've got a bounce complete. And then the question is it going to close this gap or not? So there's a couple to look at in the US, but FCX has got to be our chart of the day in the resource space. Okay, anything else you want me to have a look at, guys? WPL, there we are. I've not been enthused about a WPL chart at all, but we're starting to get to a point which might be interesting. So this 23.30 level looks sort of interesting, but I would actually be very aware of that 200 MA sitting at around about 23.50. So that might be the level at which I'll get interested long. Yeah, let me just find them. BIN. Bingo on a daily chart, very choppy, but do look as though really traded sideways. Not familiar with Bingo at all. Yeah, we can look at a couple of healthcare stocks. Sonic, still bouncing along support here at around about that $35 level. No sign of a bounce as yet. Looked as though it might today, but has given up a lot of the early gains. So not interested in that. Qantas, we'll have a look at Qantas. Now this is a significant move on Qantas. So we smashed through that 200 MA. Now we talked quite significantly about being patient to wait to see if it broke that $5, and it didn't. So really, all bets are off with Qantas. Although it may be interesting to see what happens if it does get down towards this 450 level that we hit at the beginning of the year. It may be interesting to see if we get any sort of movement to the upside, but at this stage, there's no signs of anything opening. Obviously, we've got news out of Sydney, so really that's not a good place to be anymore. And arguably, yesterday could have been an opportunity to trade this short down to perhaps that 450 level. So not feeling good about Qantas at all. I'm just looking through and see if I've covered all the ones that you wanted me to. Okay, let's just have a quick check-in back on the index as a whole and futures. So we see the futures are turning slightly negative, so not looking like a really good place to be. We're seeing there's not only sell-off in the Aussie, but also in the Kiwi. We might actually just have a quick look at a Euro. Just have a quick look at Euro Aussie and Euro Kiwi. They're all sideways trading. It's really tough on FX for right now, unless you're in and out, grabbing a 10 and 20 pips here and there. Let's put on a 30-minute chart. Yeah, again, if you caught that, good on you. But you'd have to have been over it like a rash and actually watching it at the time. So Euro, interestingly, Euro Kiwi, we're looking actually like a potential sell, like a potential short position on the daily chart, possibly down to test this about 100 pips down to test this next support level down on the back of yesterday's bearish candle. But you can see all of we're really right back up to that 166.75, and arguably could even move the 100 pips up to tackle that if this continues. It'd be interesting to know why we've got nice potential, even on the hourly chart, we've got a nice potential stop in place there. You'd want to see it break that pivot high, could be pausing at 56 pips higher in the first instance, but that's interesting. Both commodity-based currencies showing a little bit of weakness. Euro GB pound, yeah, Jonathan, let's have a quick look at that. So let's get the broader picture. Again, trading within a range there, and support, you probably put your support around about this level here. Actually, you might put your support a bit higher than that, because there was only actually one candle on the daily chart that actually closed below that 186.28 level. So we do look as though we're shaping up to potential bounce off this support. Early days on this, but certainly looking promising. Perhaps that 86.40, which essentially was the high in the Asian session so far, could be where to watch it. And then we've got maybe 30, 35 pips in that. Jonathan, perhaps to scalp. Okay, guys. Well, look, I think that's it. So our US chart, share CFD chart of the day is FCX. we still like Iluka, but and Galaxy in Australia. And obviously on the FX front, we pointed out, I think it was the GB pound yen. We talked about on a break of 152.20. Okay, Andrew, you're very welcome. Yep, talk to you later, Ross. You're welcome, David. No worries. Cheers, Ewan. Thanks, Anthony. You're welcome, Jonathan. You guys trade safe. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on Tuesday. Have a fantastic weekend. You're welcome, Michael and Rachel. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll catch you next week. China NDRC stops further trade with AU. That's interesting, Andrew. Thank you for that. Wow. Okay, that's obviously why things are dropping. It's a continued trade issue with China, which was predictable in light of what Australia did last week. There was always going to be some retaliation, and that, it looks like, is it. Hey, Sue, good to see you here, and you're very welcome. Take care, guys. Catch you later. Bye-bye for now.